Good evening. I've observed politics and politicians for almost 2 decades now. In that time, I've learned a few lessons. One of which is, while we'd like our political leaders to always apply their foresight and strategic thinking towards solving the pressing problems we face, sometimes politics is just a game to them. A game of power and dominance, one of upmanship and of thinking a few moves ahead of their rivals and opponents. But if this is a game and it affects your livelihood one way or another, isn't it time you get to know who the kings and the queens are in this game? Who are the bishops and who are the pawns? And hopefully that's not you and I, by the way. Welcome to the State of Play. Well, one arena where the game of politics has been but should not have been played is in our intelligence agencies. The result is the emaciated, impotent and blunt intelligence apparatus Sydney Mufamadi's high-level panel found during its investigation. More than a year since the panel released its report, I sat down with the State Security Minister, Ayanda Dlodlo. In our opening gambit, I asked her about the national security threats that South Africa faces and also asked her about the threat of sabotage at our power stations, as was revealed by President Cyril Ramaphosa in December. So here's our opening gambit.
Some of the work that we do is communicated to state-owned entities, it's communicated to departments. It's a matter of how departments deal with the work that we give to them or the intelligence reports that we give to them. We do not have enforcement capability. No law makes a provision for that enforcement capability. But again, it comes back to the issue that I raised about state capacity. Was it sabotage? And that's what we're investigating, the team that the president has set up. If it was not sabotage, then what was it? What does it actually point to, Thulasizwe, if it was not sabotage? It would point to capacity of Eskom to deliver on its mandate. And those are the threats that I'm talking about, because sometimes we look at threats as being vandalizing, terrorism, violence, destruction of property, and stuff like that. That's not what national security threats actually are. But the ability of state departments or state players to be able to deliver on the mandates of departments for the state in general to be able to deliver on its mandate.
First part of your answer is interesting there, Minister, where you talk about what you relay by way of what you pick up in terms of intelligence reports to various other agencies. Are you saying that in this instance you had warned that...
No, we had not warned. And that's why I prefaced my elaboration on the issue to say we need to flag the issue of state capacity as a possible threat to national security.
Right.
So the security of energy, which if it is not there has many implications. Economic development, it affects economic development, which in turn then has an impact on growth and development. It has an impact on employment, it has an impact, and all of those have other impacts. If there is a huge problem of unemployment, the threats of violence, the threats of criminality and stuff like that. So I think we need to be at a point where we say the capacity of the state is one of the threats that we highlight and address that.
What have you done about the politicization of the agency and the it being embroiled in faction politics of the governing party, the ANC, that was flagged?
Thulasizwe, I have said this when I was appointed. I'm not interested in an agency that dabbles in the political factions or issues of the African National Congress. Though I might say a stable African National Congress is good for our country, because it is the governing party. That's very important. Would it at some point be a source of scrutiny if it is a threat to national security? Those are the things that we need to be talking about openly between the political parties concerned and also government, but also civil society. Because at some point we need to be able to say, we're not going to get involved in party political issues, because that's not our place. But our responsibility is to ensure that the sovereignty of the state is upheld, that we assist government in the implementation of its own programs, highlight those areas that become a threat to the implementation of policy.
But it's one thing, Minister, for focusing on the goings on in the ANC in as far as they impact national security. It's quite another to have agents who are actively playing politics. For instance, what the report highlights examples of where it was reported that we managed to block the distribution of CR17 T-shirts in Rustenburg. We were able to infiltrate and influence the Fees Must Fall activists, etc. That's a different thing altogether.
No, I agree with you, but that's what I was saying. I was saying that I have made it very clear when I came in that ANC politics are not of interest to us. They're not of interest to us. Hence, the issue of highlighting what it is that is national security threats becomes very important, so that people do not get involved in issues that are not their business. When we came in here, we were very clear. The only person that is accountable to Lutuli House, to Parliament, is the minister, and nobody else. So I don't want to be seeing people walking in corridors of political parties. And it's not just the ANC, by the way. It is all political parties that have an interest in this place. And I don't want our people to dabble in the politics of our country in that way.
People? Have you heard?
No, I haven't purged people. I haven't purged people. Thulasizwe, we rehabilitate people, because people have experience, people have the skills that we need. We cannot throw people out, because we know that we have a way of rehabilitating individuals. We have a way of redeployment of individuals, but we do not want people to be part of the politics of the day.
Speaking of the Director General, what's your relationship like with him?
It's fine. Loyiso Jafta? He's the acting Director General.
I'm actually not talking about the Director General. I'm talking about the head of the domestic branch.
No, it's fine. Our relationship is fine. Yeah, our relationship is fine.
So there's reports that we were seeing suggesting a bit of tension.
There were tensions, as you would find in a workplace. There are always tensions.
Yeah.
But we have resolved all of that. We're working at ensuring that what it is that we're supposed to do is done. That has been resolved.
Did you instruct him to authorize the interception of communication of a person outside of the prescripts, as in going through the judicial process?
Can I answer this differently? Can I say that if you go through RICA, and if you look at the operations of any intelligence organization, you do things to save lives, you do things to save limb, you do things to save property. I really wouldn't want to go into that issue and answer you directly. But I want to tell you that RICA not RICA, the Act, RICA, the Act does allow for interception. Remember, at that time, we didn't even have a judge that was in place. You must remember that. There was no judge in place. There was an impending attack on people. What then do we do? And that is my question that I leave to you.
Right, so we can safely read between the lines there that the stakes were that high, and
they were very high. They were very high. I had to ask other people to intervene and assist in ensuring that attack on that day did not happen.
Right,
and it did not.
To do with the xenophobic violence that was plaguing the country at the time. But how can South Africans trust then that you're not spying on all of us and deciding by yourself that the stakes are too high here and therefore we should intercept the communication in this instance? We saw what the finding was.
I think it's important, Thulasizwe, that we communicate to South Africans what we think the threats to national security are. What we think are threats to our integrity as a country, what we think are a threat to the sovereignty of our nation. I think if we do that and communicate with our people continuously, they will embrace and understand why it is that certain actions have to be taken.
The Protection of State Information Bill became very controversial. It's a good 10 years since this was first mooted. In fact, it's over 10 years. Where it was last I checked was on the president's desk,
yes,
and he had no appetite, really didn't seem to sign it, but he didn't send it back to Parliament and also didn't send it to the Constitutional Court for them to basically verify it and check it for constitutionality. Is there still appetite for such an act for protection of state information kind of act?
And you see, Thulasizwe, the state is not government. The state is wider than just government. And that information that we would seek to protect speaks to the sovereignty of the nation. There are issues of espionage that are not covered in any piece of legislation. And that bill sought to provide for that. How do you deal with acts of sabotage, with acts of espionage? That is not there. There is technology that is developed by our country, IP that belongs to South Africa. The Denel issue, for instance. How do we deal with that if it is not provided for in law? So the list is endless. Again, coming back to the identification of threats. There is information that the rest of the world would want to gain access to. If that information is either sold or shared with other parties without the consent of the structures that give permission for that to be done, that becomes espionage.
So there's
then how do we deal with
act to deal with that?
Yes, there is.
Cybersecurity. Do we have people dedicated to seeing the threats? I mean, we saw the city of Joburg in the last few months coming under attack. That's where
twice
many of the threats are coming from.
Twice.
How are we getting attacked when we should actually, this is an area where we should have capacity to look into?
All of the intelligence entities work on that. We do work on that. We do sometimes. What you see is not what actually goes on, because there are others that we would have picked up and curbed. There are others that we would have dealt with and shared with the department's consent. So there is capacity, but is it at the level at which I'd like to see it? The answer is no.
Have we given up on investigating the theft of 17 million rand here at your headquarters a few years ago?
No.
If we've not
the investigation is ongoing.
What does that mean?
It's with the law enforcement agencies, but even internally we're doing our own investigation.
Do you believe we'll crack that case eventually?
I think we will.
Right. Lastly,
we are almost there with that case.
We're almost there
with that case.
That's good to hear. So that's the State Security Minister, Ayanda Dlodlo, in conversation with me a bit earlier on. Coming up, the former head of the Foreign Intelligence Unit at the State Security Agency, that's Mo Sheikh, and Murray Hunter from Circle Up, join me in conversation in just a moment.